I still don't want to talk about what happened at Camp Echo Pines. My parents say I made it up. The counselor claimed that it was merely a trick of the shadows, but I know what I saw. I was excited when my parents dropped me off at the summer camp. Kids were running everywhere. I was excited to make new friends. Our camp counselor assigned us to cabins. The girls' cabin was on the left side of the campsite, and the boys' on the right. I shared a room with 3 other children, and we enjoyed having fun throughout the day. After dinner, we went back to our cabins, as we had an early morning hike the next day. Even if I was tired, sleep didn't come easy because of the new surroundings. The bunk beds creaked every time I moved, and the cabin smelled like old wood and bug spray. But I slowly drifted off. It was probably past midnight when I woke up with the urge to pee. I regretted drinking too much lemonade. The outhouse wasn't that far, but the thought of going out into the dark by myself spooked me. I didn't want to wake anyone else up because they were all snoring. I took my flashlight, unzipped my sleeping bag, and stepped out of the cabin door. The trees were moving slowly with the gentle breeze. The sound of crickets and hooting owls made the atmosphere more eerie. I walked over the gravel path holding the flashlight. Its beams bounced in front of me. I was halfway to the outhouse when I heard a rustle in the woods. It sounded like someone stepping on dry leaves. I stopped and looked around, but no one was there. I quickly reached the outhouse, wanting to get done ASAP. Just before entering, I pointed my flashlight at the deep woods behind it, and I saw something. There was a person standing between the trees looking at me. He had no clothes, only his underwear. His skin was pale, and his face was full of veins. He wasn't moving, just stood there. His eyes were wide and focused on me, while his arms hung at his sides. I gulped in fear, because he wasn't standing very far, and the fence between us was severely damaged. "Hello?" I yelled in a shaken voice. He blinked, but didn't say anything. The blank expression on his face made him look like a patient straight out of a mental institution. I called out again. Do you need help?" He still didn't answer, but this time, he smiled. My body screamed at me to run, but I couldn't move. My legs felt like cement, and my hands shook so much that I almost dropped the flashlight. Then, all of a sudden, he took a step. I jumped. Dry leaves crunched under his bare foot as he started coming towards me. He wasn't running, just weirdly walking in my direction. He was so thin that I could see his ribs through his skin. It looked like he hadn't eaten in weeks. He kept coming at me, and I just stood there, completely drowned in trauma and shock. When he was only inches away, I heard my counselor's voice echoing from the campsite. "Who's there?" His loud call brought me to reality. I turned around and ran down the gravel path, my flashlight making strange shadows on the trees around me. I was wheezing and crying, and my eyes started to hurt. I fell once and cut my hand on the gravel, but I got back up. I just wanted to get to the cabin, close the door, and never come out. My counselor saw me running like a lost kid. He stopped and asked why I was so late. I told him about the man in the woods. He immediately woke up the other camp volunteers, and they all searched the campground for possible intrusion. When they saw the broken fence, they became worried because it allowed not only people, but also wild animals to enter the campground. The team took me to the office for first aid. The search went on for almost an hour, but no sketchy dude in underwear was found in the area. The next morning, the maintenance guys were called, and they repaired the fence. The counselor also informed the local cops just for safety purposes. We continued camping a week more, but I didn't go out of the cabin after dark. I deliberately drank less water so I wouldn't have to go pee. Slowly, everyone said I just hallucinated because no one else saw him apart from me. Do you also think it was my imagination? Last month, I took a long break and went on vacation. I'm a sporty guy who loves adventure, especially scuba diving. I booked a trip to a quiet island that seemed like the perfect way to start over. I hadn't had a real vacation in years. There was only me, the waves, and silence. The clouds were low and heavy on the morning of the dive, but the weather reports said they would clear up by noon. I wasn't too worried, as it wasn't my first time. When I told the man at the dive shop I was going alone, he raised an eyebrow, but I didn't care. I thought I knew what I was up to. The currents had gotten stronger by the time I got 15 meters down. The water, which had been clear blue, was now cloudy. I hovered for a moment, trying to figure out where I was, but the pressure changed, and the waves above pulled harder than usual. My stomach turned, and I realized I needed to get out of the water. The world underwent a transformation as I broke through the ocean's surface. The sky above me was covered in thick, boiling clouds, and the wind was howling already. The raindrops hit my face like needles. I had no idea that the storm would come so quickly. I was experienced enough to know that the boat that was supposed to pick me up had already left and gone back to the marina. Taking a quick look around, I figured out I wasn't far from shore, but the beach I had come up on was a quiet stretch I didn't know. As I swam to shore, the waves hit me. I crawled up onto the wet beach, sand grinding between my teeth. I was standing in a circle, soaking wet. There were no humans in that area, just the jungles and jagged cliffs, and at some distance, a cave. The palm trees and wind-blown shadows half covered the cave, hidden behind a bend in the cliffs. A lightning crack cracked behind me, numbing my ears, and I ran to the cave. It was cool and dry inside. The storm's noise faded into a low growl as I ran my hand through my wet hair. I just stood at the entry point, catching my breath, and thanking God for this unexpected shelter. The storm grew louder, and I probably spent half an hour just watching the high tides. The water in my dive suit was cold and stuck to my skin. It was getting very boring to wait like that. Hence, I got curious. I turned on the light on my helmet and set out to explore the cave. The cave extended further than I had anticipated, and the walls were covered in moss and weeds. There were strange patterns on the stone. I couldn't tell if they were carvings or just natural phenomena. As I went deeper, the silence became strange. There weren't even sounds of water dripping or birds chirping. The only sound I could hear was my breathing. It seemed like no one had been here in a long time. I was casually looking around when I saw a man sitting on a large rock. My flashlight illuminated him well enough to get a good look from the distance. There was a slight tilt to his head, suggesting that he was either sleeping or meditating. Thinking I'd found some company, I yelled, "Hey!" No answer. I got closer. Are you okay?" I could see his body move. He lifted his head. And in that moment, I felt weird. His face was not right. His lips were cracked and blackened, and his skin was pale. His wide eyes were tired and sunken, yet he smiled at me. He raised his arm and gave a lazy, casual wave before collapsing onto the stone floor. I stopped. There was something very, very wrong. But what if he's sick? What if he needs help? I took a few steps forward. "Dude, are you hurt?" When I got close enough to touch him, his body jerked up like a puppet. He looked at me and started coughing. I can't even explain how horrific it was to watch him like that. He wasn't just coughing air. He was coughing blood. His chest heaved with wheezing coughs, sending more blood flying across the stone floor. This continued for 5 to 10 seconds. Then he stopped and began laughing like a maniac. I stumbled back in fear. There was blood all over his face. His teeth were red. He kept laughing, as if something inside him had broken and made him happy at the same time. That was the last straw for me. I sprinted at full speed, leaving the guy behind me. I turned around one last time, and he was waving at me, sitting on the ground like nothing happened. As I emerged from the cave, the storm struck me with the force of a wall. The rain was pouring down, and the lightning was crashing. But I didn't care. The outside felt safer than the cave in that moment. I ran all the way to the resort, shaking and wet. Since then, I haven't gone scuba diving alone.
After the crash, the day my parents died, there wasn't a funeral or time to grieve. We didn't have family besides my parents, and they were gone. Besides that, it all started. The paperwork, hospital lights, and then a long car ride with a woman named Deborah, who talked the whole time like we were going to a sleepaway camp. She dropped me at a place called Grayson House, a foster home in the middle of nowhere. The building looked clean, but wrong. Red bricks, spotless windows, a garden that looked too perfect for the silence around it. There were security cameras at every corner. As we walked in, a man and woman stood at the door, both smiling like store mannequins. They introduced themselves as George and Linda. Their words were warm, but their eyes didn't blink enough. They led me into the main room, where 7 other kids sat on a couch, their backs straight, hands folded. Each one nodded at me. Not one of them said a word. A girl named Amy walked me to my room without making eye contact. There were no toys, no posters, no clothes on the floor. Everything was perfectly folded and clean. That first night, I kept my eyes open, even under the blanket. I heard nothing. No whispers, no creaks. Just the sound of my own breathing getting faster every time I thought about how fake the smiles were and how none of the kids had asked me a single question. By the 3rd day, I realized everything ran on a schedule, down to the second. Wake up, wash up, dress in the same gray clothes, breakfast in silence. George sat at the table like a prison guard, arms crossed, eyes scanning. Linda handed out food with a mechanical smile. No one said a word unless spoken to. After breakfast, we cleaned, then schoolwork, then the garden, then dinner, then bed. Doors locked from the outside. I tried talking to Tyler, one of the older boys, while we were outside pulling weeds. I asked him how long he'd been there. He didn't answer. He didn't even look at me. That's when I noticed a small bruise behind his ear. When I reached out to ask again, he flinched like I'd hit him. That same day, Linda told me the only rule here was respect, and if I didn't follow it, there would be consequences. One night I heard scratching sounds from the hallway. I got up to check, but the door wouldn't budge. I pressed my ear to the wood and heard quiet sobbing, then a sharp slap, and then complete silence. When I woke up, the hallway was spotless, and one of the boys, Eli, had a swollen cheek. He told me he fell. George nodded slowly in the background, watching every word. That was when I realized these people didn't care about us. They weren't trying to help. They were keeping us quiet, keeping us hidden, and making sure we stayed that way. The first time I disobeyed a rule was by accident. I didn't put my shoes back in the exact same spot by the door after the garden. That night, George dragged me out of my bed by the arm. He didn't shout, didn't explain. He just pulled me to the basement, turned on a single light bulb, and made me kneel facing the wall for what felt like hours. Every time I moved, he kicked the back of my leg. When he was done, he whispered in my ear,
"Next time you forget, I'll break your fingers."
When he let me go, I could barely walk. No one said anything until the next morning, but Eli slipped me a piece of toast when no one was looking. I understood then that the kids were looking out for each other. They just couldn't say it out loud. Over the next week, I saw more signs, small ones, hidden gestures. Amy tapped her finger twice on the table before speaking. Tyler rubbed his wrist whenever George was nearby. At first, I thought it was random, but then I saw the pattern. It was a system, a language. They had built it to warn each other, to survive. But George and Linda weren't that innocent. They saw it too. One day during cleaning time, George made Amy kneel in the middle of the kitchen. He asked everyone in the room to say who they loved most. Nobody answered. He repeated the question. Still, silence. Then, with no warning, he grabbed Amy's hand and crushed it under a rolling pin. I tried to scream, but Tyler held me back, whispering under his breath for me to not react. Amy bit down on her own arm to keep from crying. When it was over, George smiled.
We don't need love in this house. We need discipline.
That night I cried quietly in the dark, not because I was scared of dying, but because I realized they were breaking us, one by one, and there was no one coming to stop it. When the social worker came for her monthly visit, we were all lined up in clean clothes, fake smiles on our faces. Claire, the worker, asked if everything was all right. She even pulled me aside to ask again in private. I hesitated. I wanted to tell her, I really did. But 2 days before she arrived, George showed us a photo of Liam, the youngest boy, sleeping. He pointed at the picture and said,
You say one wrong word, I'll make sure he never wakes up.
Claire asked again if I was safe. I nodded and said yes. I hated myself the moment I did it. She smiled, gave me a brochure I wasn't allowed to keep, and left. After she was gone, George didn't speak for a whole hour. He just stood in the living room, staring at us. Then he picked Liam up by the arm and dragged him into the bathroom. We didn't see him for the rest of the night. When he came back, he wouldn't talk, wouldn't eat. His face was pale, and his hands shook. I wanted to run. I thought about it every minute. Amy told me that they had cameras, alarms, traps in the backyard. The windows were nailed shut. But I couldn't stay. I couldn't become like the others, walking dead, afraid of breathing too loud. The breaking point came when I found blood in the laundry room. Not a little, a lot. A shirt soaked and still warm. I didn't know whose it was. No one was missing, but something in me snapped that night. I knew I'd either leave that house or die in it. We waited 2 more days. The rain had to be heavy enough to cover footsteps. Tyler helped me figure out which window hatch was loose. Amy made a fake version of me with a stuffed coat under the blanket in case they checked the beds. I didn't sleep. I just waited for midnight. The moment came fast. I slipped out of the room, careful not to breathe too loud. Eli opened the laundry room window from the inside. I crawled through, landed hard on the dirt, and started running. I barely made it halfway across the backyard when the alarm went off. A spotlight hit me. George's voice boomed behind me, louder than I'd ever heard.
Get back here now, or I swear to God I'll kill every last one of them.
I didn't stop. I couldn't. My legs pumped like they never had before. He was close. I heard the crunch of his boots behind me. Then a shout. Then a loud crash. I looked back and saw that Eli had tripped George, throwing a rake into his path. George recovered fast, though. Too fast. He tackled me near the fence. We rolled. His fist slammed into my side. I kicked him, bit his arm, screamed. He pinned me down and said something I'll never forget.
No one leaves unless I say they can.
Then Amy appeared, swinging a metal pipe. It hit his shoulder, knocking him off of me. I didn't wait. I climbed the fence, tore my hands on the barbed wire, and dropped to the other side. I heard him scream. I heard the kids yelling, but I kept running. I slept behind dumpsters, under bridges, and empty bus stops. I didn't care about food. I just needed to breathe air that wasn't poisoned by George and Linda's house. I lasted 5 days like that before my body gave up. I walked into a police station, half dead, and told them everything. They took notes, sent officers. They didn't believe any of it until I showed them a notebook. Bruises, scars, the blood-stained backpack I carried. When they finally raided the house, it was spotless. No kids, no adults, just folded bed sheets and cleaned out rooms, as if it had all been a dream. They had vanished. Every trace of them, gone. The police told me they'd keep investigating, but I saw it in their eyes. Another lost cause. Another case too late to solve. The foster system swallowed kids all the time. I was just one more voice that was too late. I don't have dreams anymore. I have flashes. Tyler's face in the rain. Amy's broken hand. Liam's silence. Every time I see a report about a new foster home, I show up. I check the place myself, even though it's not my job. I became a social worker because I needed to make sure no kid gets buried like we were. I know George and Linda are still out there. I feel it. Somewhere, they're doing it again. And who knows? With enough luck, maybe I'll get them.